Thank you very much, and thanks to you, Director Santos, for joining us here this morning. The census is an essential decennial constitutional function insisted upon by the founders in designing a government of we the people. And the census was conducted and designed in 2020 under the Trump administration, not under the Biden administration. And of course, as the chairman says, there's demographic movement in America, in a free society where people have a constitutional right to travel across state lines and to move. There's always demographic movement. The chairman suggests people are fleeing taxes in the blue states. I know there are people fleeing the anti-abortion restrictions in red states because I met a lot of them over Thanksgiving, actually, young women who don't want to live in the red states under the new regime of state legislative theocratic control over the bodies of women. But in any event, that's all part of the normal course of demographic movement. Americans can decide to live where they want to live. Now, the Bureau faced some giant and unprecedented challenges in conducting the 2020 census. It took place in the COVID-19 global pandemic, which significantly complicated the work of census staff as huge parts of the public were worried about contracting COVID-19. It severely affected the work of the census. Many census activities were suspended or shifted, and in many states and localities, lockdowns and travel restrictions stopped the Census Bureau from accessing entire communities and neighborhoods. A number of other problems caused by the pandemic further affected the count, such as double counting people who had temporarily moved in with their family or friends to try to survive the crisis, or college students being counted twice after being sent home from school mid-semester, or not being counted at all if they were missed. Overcounts can occur when members of a family with a second home list their primary address in different ways, or when a landlord lists a tenant as living in an apartment, even if the tenant lists another residence as their primary address if they've gone to try to wait out the epidemic in a different place. Overcounts and undercounts are not a new problem. They are a traditional problem, a long-standing problem, as the GAO says, but there's always a new variety of challenges in different settings. And obviously, the disastrous response of the federal government to COVID-19 deeply complicated the work of the Census Bureau. The census also had to contend with hurricanes and wildfires affecting a number of different states, and it was conducted following limited tests because of substantial budget cuts that had taken place in the years before the census. There's no reason to see these undercounts and overcounts as anything more than the normal kinds of errors made during exceptionally difficult circumstances. But the usual profusion of conspiracy theories have proliferated from people not interested in making the census work better, but simply in scaring the public and dividing people along party lines. The post-enumeration survey is only intended to measure accuracy for a subset of the population. For example, it doesn't include people living in college dorms or people living in military barracks. Moreover, it draws its conclusions from a very small survey of 170,000 housing units out of 145 million in the country. In other words, the post-enumeration survey is a tool to help inform and guide future census activities. It is not a recount of the census, nor can it be or should it be used to supplant or alter actual census data for purposes of apportionment and distribution of government funds. I appreciate the chairman calling this hearing today because we should all want a complete and accurate 2030 census, but the solutions to achieve it are not really a mystery. Instead of cutting funding for the Bureau, as House Republicans have tried to do this year and years past, we need to make sure it has the resources it needs to conduct the planning and preparatory work that are essential to a truly successful count. Instead of threatening to add a citizenship question to the census, which experts have warned will depress participation, we should support the Census Bureau in fulfilling the clear mandate of counting the whole number of persons in each state set forth in the Constitution. The census must be an independent, non-political exercise conducted by statisticians and qualified professionals, not an arm of the political office of whichever administration happens to be in charge. And we must ensure that the census never becomes an authoritarian tool of fear and control, which is what it is in authoritarian societies. The census must always remain a tool to nourish and improve our democracy by empowering Americans through equal representation and equal access to resources and opportunity. The census plays a critical role in our democracy, guaranteeing there will be a fair allocation of House seats in the country and House districts of equal population within each state. It also assures that government resources and benefits will be distributed fairly. It's not easy to count 334.9 million people in the world's greatest multiracial, multi-ethnic constitutional democracy, and the census must constantly improve its methods. This should be the grounds for analysis and serious conversation, not partisan-motivated conspiracy theory and fear-mongering. Thank you, Director Santos, for your hard work, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling this meeting, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Today we are joined